Good morning, good evening, whatever time of day it is for you. Welcome to this thing that I do called Thor's Entertainment. I am Thor, and today I'm doing another Fatal Friday video. Fatal Friday being the series I do where I go into the Kombat League for Mortal Kombat 1 and I casually try to get the unique finishers for the main roster and Kameo fighters. And by unique finishers, I do mean their fatalities and brutalities. Speaking of which, this time around I am going for another finisher for the Kameo Scorpion. And that finisher is going to be his Brutality Well Done. And Well Done is just going to be the Brutality version of the forward throw whenever you have the Kameo Scorpion equipped as your Kameo.
Why should I again agree to aid you?
Do you wish to save Eternus or not?
Take one. Action!
Now, since I am the only one using the Kameo Scorpion, it's probably obvious that I'm also using Quan Chi as my main character, and those two teamed up together probably is not an unusual sight if you've seen any of the other videos where I went for either Quan Chi or the Kameo Scorpion's finishers. That's because they have been paired up the entire time, and I've only exclusively used them whenever getting their finishers. Although speaking of pairings, I'm looking at a pretty odd one at the moment. My opponent is using Nitara, but also using the Kameo Darrius. I don't think I have ever seen that before. Now, I don't use Darrius, well, that's not true. I very rarely have ever used Darrius, and definitely never online in the Kombat League, but even though I have sparingly used him to some extent, I'm definitely not familiar with him all that much, other than just a couple of his attacks being overheads, and now, one of his attacks that costs his entire Kameo meter can also basically turn anyone's throw into a full combo. That's about the extent I know about Darrius, which makes me super curious what he can do with Nitara. Which honestly, I think I say that every single time I see anyone using Darrius, with the exception of people using Reiko. Like, him and Reiko are kind of a common pairing, but outside of that exact matchup, I never really see anybody using Darrius, so I immediately just start wondering to myself, oh man, what can they do with this Kameo and that character? And if I'm being completely honest, usually not a lot, but I am always up for being surprised. I mean, by all means, show me some crazy Darrius combos. I definitely do not have enough of that in my life. But yeah, even though this is supposed to be a highlighting video for Scorpion as my Kameo fighter and going for the well done brutality, just finding somebody using Darrius in the wild may actually be the real highlight of this video. And okay, I've been kind of watching this footage back, trying to get an idea of how exactly they were trying to use Darrius with Nitara, and I've seen a couple of things that give me an idea of what they were shooting for, but it did not work out for them. Very first thing that I saw was whenever we were up in the air and Nitara was getting one of her mini air combos, she ended it in the, oh wow, I can't remember the name of the attack. But it's the blood-sucking attack where she bites your neck. And if you meter burn that, she'll kick you into the air and continue the combo, but the opponent did not do that. Instead, they elected to just let Quan Chi fall to the ground. But they had summoned Darrius, and Darrius was doing that full meter attack that I mentioned to you before, where it extends, combos. I specifically said throws, but just any combos. And they tried timing it just right to where whenever Quan Chi was still in the air but falling, Darrius would kick him, which will actually hold Quan Chi in place for a brief moment, and then they could have continued the combo. Problem was they timed it wrong, so it didn't work out. Which works out for me because I ultimately end up taking that round, but that still would have been really cool to see.
I never should have trusted you.
Who protected your people from the ravages of sunlight?
Take one. Action!
Another thing that they tried doing was also that overhead kick attack that Darrius can do. It costs half a Kameo gauge. And I believe if they land that, it temporarily bounces you in the air, which would make sense based on what they did next, which was send Nitara lunging into the air. So had they landed that, I would have bounced, they would have lunged up, and then instantly Nitara could start going for an air combo. So I kind of see what they were shooting for with this, even though it didn't work out. I'm never going to complain about not losing, but it still would have been really cool to see exactly how they maximized the potential of those setups if they just, timed it right or actually landed that overhead. So yeah, if I have nothing else to say about my opponent, points for creativity. And also, I believe Darrius actually gives Nitara just a little bit more health than usual. Granted, I no longer remember the max health for Nitara, but I know it's the lowest in the game, or is really close if it's not the lowest. So giving her a cameo that reduces her health is pretty detrimental. And if somehow you had figured out how to use Darrius as your cameo optimally, and it also gave you some health back for the lowest health character, that wouldn't be bad at all. Now, I'm definitely not saying that Darrius is somehow secretly the best cameo for Nitara or anything. Like, I definitely think there are better ones, but for somebody trying to mix things up a little bit or just experiment a little bit, I could definitely see the appeal of this. Although, like I said at the very beginning of this episode, I have not messed around with Darrius as a cameo nearly enough to say whether or not this is a realistically good combo. But it would be really cool if it were. After all, like I said, I rarely ever see anybody using Darrius, so anything that gives us a little bit more variety in the matchups that we get to see online is probably not a bad thing. Anyway, I swear my Darrius tangent is finally over. I will go ahead and focus on the match at hand and focus on the character that we are trying to highlight in this episode, that being the Kameo Scorpion. So the state of the matchup is this. In this set, I am up 1-0, and now we find ourselves in the third and final round of the second match, which if I do end up winning this final round, that means I'm going to win the entire thing 2-0. And with Nitara's notoriously low health, at this point she's basically just one good combo away from being defeated. Although we don't necessarily want to defeat her with a big combo, we need to defeat her with a throw. So yeah, once her health is low enough, we're going to go ahead and go for one final throw with Scorpion and try to activate the well done Brutality.
You will serve me for eternity.
Brutality. Quan Chi wins.
And there it is, that was the well done Brutality for the Kameo Scorpion. Which makes that the second of the Brutalities I have gotten to highlight in these videos. And that also means I only have one finisher left for Scorpion, or well, the Kameo Scorpion. And that's going to be the Kameo Scorpion Fatality. So yeah, expect that video to wrap up everything I have for that Kameo character. Also, I'll go ahead and show the Brutality again one more time at the very end of the episode, that way we can enjoy it one final time before we part ways. But yeah, that ended up being a pretty fun set. I did end up winning it 2-0, but both of the matches I ended up winning did go down to a third and final round. So even though I ended up with what seems like a sweep, 2-0, it actually was really competitive the entire time. And it also had the added benefit of having a unique pairing with Nitara and Darrius. Which I said my Darrius tangent was over, but I do have one more. Because whenever I was watching the fight back, there was one other thing that they tried doing that I did not realize in real time. So they once again went for that overhead kick by Darrius, the one that bounces you in the air. But they also tried using that 2-hit low combo from Nitara at the same time. So they were trying to mix me up with an overhead and a low, basically hitting almost simultaneously, kind of creating a really hard to block situation. And I just thought that was kind of nifty. I don't really get to see that very often since I never see anyone using Darrius, and I also kind of rarely ever get to see anybody using Nitara for that matter either. Anyway, I just thought that was kind of cool, so like I mentioned earlier in the video, just definitely points for creativity to my opponent. It is always nice to see something a little bit different instead of, fighting the same characters over and over and over again. But anyway, this is going to be my stopping point for this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and just thanks for watching it to begin with. If you did end up enjoying it, feel free to check out some of the other stuff I have on the Thor's Entertainment channel. I do have a bunch of other finisher videos just like this. You can find all of those under the Mortal Kombat 1 online playlist. But yeah, that's going to do it for me. Take care, and hopefully I see you next time.
You will serve me for eternity.
Brutality. Quan Chi wins.